Hello, I'm Nobby Clark. Welcome to my workshop. I guess we're all familiar with these objects, the hacksaw. This is the most recent one I bought. It's the Lennox hacksaw frame, which I think are actually American design but now made in China. I bought this because I had some time back found a very good source of fairly inexpensive Lennox hacksaw blades, which are extremely good. The blades are actually made in America. The interesting thing with this frame is that when you put the blade in, you can actually tension it to 50,000 psi. It's rather frightening. I have a number of hacksaws. This one I bought quite a few years ago. This one here was my father's hacksaw. It's a Draper hacksaw frame made in Germany. I adapted this fairly recently. I made these little adapters here to take these round blades. They've got a cutting edge all the way round the blade. I think there are various sort of modern equivalents to these, and I had a couple of these blades which I remember buying about 45-50 years ago, with a frame that took these exact blades. The great thing about them is that if you're cutting a large hole in a piece of metal or material, you can drill a small hole and then push the blade through the hole, reset it on the frame, and these blades will actually cut in any direction. It doesn't matter how you orientate the blade into the frame, you've got a cutting edge all the way round. Sadly, this is the last blade I have for this. I can't remember now what the name of this system was. They, all those years ago, were very popular. I'd really love to get some more of these blades if I could only remember what they're called. But if someone out there knows what the name of these blades were, I did find them some years ago on eBay, but they were actually very expensive. But if I could find some at a reasonable cost, I'd really like to buy a few more, because this obviously one day will eventually blunt or break, and I just won't have another one of them. Obviously you're all familiar with the small junior hacksaws made in all sorts of different types. This one is very old. It's made by Eclipse, and I do know that some schools in the metalwork classes, this was actually a project for boys to make. Not so in the school I went to. We did have a metalwork shop there, but never got the opportunity to make one of these myself. The problem I'm finding now as I'm getting older, that when I'm cutting quite large pieces of metal with a hacksaw, I do very quickly get out of breath nowadays. And if it's a fairly large diameter piece of metal, particularly steel, I have to take sort of several breaks in between, and I'm just finding it very hard work now. I did mull over the idea of looking for a power hacksaw, but these the ones you see on eBay tend to be very large. I think that they're also nicknamed the donkey saw, and they would just be too big for me to have in my workshop here. The other thing I thought possibly was a handheld band saw, but these, are quite expensive things to buy. But I'm looking through eBay fairly recently. I came across this beast. It's handheld power hacksaw. Well, I've never seen one of these before. I did do some searches all around the internet. I found that the company's called Westphalia, but they don't appear to have this tool on their website. They're a German company, and I gather they're a general tool supplier, because they sell all sorts of different brands of tools, of various power tools, drills, and saws, and rotary saws and so forth, but I couldn't find one of these. And the great thing about this is that it does actually take standard 12-inch hacksaw blades, so it's going to be a sort of reasonable cost item to run. I know you could probably pick up a portable bandsaw, but you know, portable bandsaw blades are quite expensive and quite a bit more complicated to fit. The blade in this, it had the original blade on it, a French-made blade, and I did test it, and I think the blade was a little bit blunt. It was probably quite old, although I don't think this has had very much use. I changed the blade over, put the Lennox blade in, and I just did a few tests on it, and it works incredibly well. You've got a fence here that can be unlocked and drawn down. I couldn't, well, there were no instructions with it, and I did look through the internet to see if anyone had a download of instructions for it, but no luck there. I also emailed Westphalia in Germany, but they didn't reply to my email asking if they had a PDF copy of the instructions that they could send me. But I guess that with a piece of metal in here that you're cutting, that you draw this down against the metal to stop the hacksaw from sort of shuddering around while it's cutting. This is quite heavy, but I guess it needs also a fair bit of weight on it to bear down on the material you're cutting. As I say, I've made some test cuts with it, and it works brilliantly. I only cut a fairly small diameter piece of metal, about a ½ inch diameter, and it works beautifully. It gives a lovely cut. So as soon as a sort of next project comes along where I need to cut a piece of aluminium or brass or steel down, this is going to be my weapon of choice now. Very interesting, really. I mean, I didn't know anything like this existed. There are all sorts of mechanical hacksaws around. A lot of people have built their own. Myford Boy sells a set of plans to build one. There's also a kit available through Hemingway to make one as well. But the Hemingway kit would certainly cost considerably more than what I paid for this. I think this was, you know, quite a reasonable buy, really. I've toyed with the idea of whether I could convert this into a bench operated machine by having it on some sort of hinged base with a vise below, that I can let the weight of it run down to cut through a piece of metal rather than having to hold the full weight of it all the time. But that might be a few experiments to carry out at some point. I mean, if anyone's seen one of these before, if anyone happens to be watching my video that owns one like this, it'd be very interesting to hear from them. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this rather unusual video. Thank you again to everyone that's very kindly subscribed to my channel. The numbers are not very high, but they're building slowly, and I'm very, very grateful to anyone that has sent me comments and suggestions and advice as well, which has been most gratefully received. Anyway, thank you very much for joining me here today. Bye bye for now.